Gamiel would love to kick off the call. For those of you who are new, Gamiel is the Chief Business Officer of Mayfield Fund. Gamiel has been a longtime friend of the lab since the beginning of the lab and has known Jim directly prior to the lab as well. Gamiel also runs a quite large and extensive, in-depth CXO network through Mayfield as well. That is pretty strategic for their portfolio companies too. With that being said, Gamiel, I'd love to kick it off to you and get started on the sort of the overview of Mayfield Fund, and then potentially how our companies could partner with Mayfield as well.
Great. All right, so good morning, everybody. Gamiel Gran here at Mayfield in California, and the deck that I've got is intended to share with founders how to think about go-to-market. And I'm going to pop through some slides. Please stop me with questions. Jim sent me a note late last night with some additional questions that he wanted me to cover, and I said, hey, that's great. You can just ask me those questions on the fly, but that's not the deck I have in mind. So I'm going to try my best to cover things that I think are interesting, but again, stop me as we go. So at a high level, Mayfield been around a long time. We're over a 50-year-old venture capital firm. We're actually one of the original venture capital firms here in the Valley. The whole Fairchild Semiconductor, Arthur Rock funding that took place in the 60s, if we can go back that far, was really the original team. So Arthur Rock helped to create that investment thesis that our founding partner back in '69 used to launch Mayfield's first fund. We're now on our 20th fund. We invest across 3 different sectors: enterprise, consumer, and engineering biology, which is both human and planet health. We write check sizes between $500,000 and $3 million for seed deals and 4 to 12 for Series A. So we're an inception based investor is the term that we use. This makes up most of our companies that we have formally announced in our portfolio at this stage. Many more that are in still stealth mode that we haven't formally announced. We're looking at making between 1 and 2 new deal investments every month across these different sectors. So my role uniquely here at Mayfield is what we call Chief Commercial Officer, which is sort of a made-up title, if you will. I bring experience of having run operations, sales, marketing, distribution, channels, corporate development, M&A work across different companies, and I use that operator experience to help our extended portfolio of companies across these 3 different sectors. So I serve across our entire portfolio and really help them on go-to-market principles, storytelling, which is critical, and being able to capture early market traction through the network that Sumay talked about that we've established, and I can talk a little bit about that. And then follow-on investing. So I spent a lot of time with follow-on investors to help our portfolio companies. And the topics today that I wanted to dive into is rationalizing your go-to-market. Are you clear on what that is and where is that? PLG, or product-led growth, is de rigueur the tactic of the day for entering in the enterprise space and rationalizing whether PLG is a fit for you. Something I call violent product market fit. How do you move from nice to have to true must have, and when are you clear that you've reached that? Getting to know your ICP, and not just at a high level, but really in depth, and then how to nail or mess up a customer pitch along that line. So if that all makes sense, let me just dive into some of the things we think about. So at a high level, there's phases of your go-to-market growth, and we think of it in very simple terms here. That first phase is really nailing product market fit. Moving to this painkiller solution, and it's where you have a relatively small team, and it's a very iterative process. Perhaps you have a design partner thesis, beta program, early modeling of use cases, and you use that to refine between the nice idea that is a little difficult to explain to a really clear message that resonates so clearly with your ICP that they want more, giving you an opportunity to now move into hiring and developing a sales organization and a process to capture real customers, and you begin to move into this iterative selling playbook process where there's onboarding, there's profiling for types of customers as a true go-to-market motion, et cetera. And then from there, of course, we move into a full scale out of the company. So this, again, is very high level. I can share these slides after, so I know there's a lot of detail here. But one of the things that we've been witnessing, this is the iteration toward product-led growth, is there's an evolving business model that says product-led growth is a new way to organize the team. And here's the point. You can't separate your go-to-market as a secondary decision or process that can be handled later. You need to decide now at the beginning of your company what the heck your go-to-market thesis will be. Don't assume that when you hire your first salesperson, now that you're focused on product, that salesperson will figure it out. You have to figure it out at the beginning, and everybody on the team should be part of this new product-led growth thesis. This is the theory. And at a high level, product-led growth is this theory that I believe transforms some of the bigger sort of transitions that we've seen in the marketplace. ERP back in the early 90s took over or replaced, this is my thesis, with CRM in the early 2000s. And now this new OS that is the product-driven organization, and those companies that understand how to shorten the distance between the maker of the product and the true user who generates revenue with your product, those that have the shortest path there are the ones who will win in this market. There's a number of reasons why people are moving toward product-led growth. The way that customers want to self-educate, the cost of acquiring customers, so CAC or customer acquisition costs are pretty expensive these days, and leveraging a self-adoption model, which is what customers really want to do, is a better practice. Lots of game changers in the industry are leveraging product-led growth, so it's not just a tech-focused thesis. There's a number of attributes from an investor standpoint as to why we think product-led growth matters. Both the revenue number, the rule of 40, the kind of customer acquisition numbers really imply or demonstrate rather that PLG is a superior metrics-driven model relative to traditional non-PLG businesses. So any questions on any of that?
Hey, Gamiel, this is Jim. I'm sorry for being a few minutes late. I had our Q1 board meeting that ran over. Thank you for this conversation. Guys, for your standpoint, Gamiel is presenting not just kind of what he's learned, but is it safe to say, Gamiel, that these are operating principles that as investors, you're looking for this within teams, right? To demonstrate maturity of their, not only operational know-how, but maturity in their product and where they are in the life cycle.
Yeah, and exactly. And as an investor, we're going to anticipate that you as founders will have a hypothesis around go-to-market that's been honed, that you've leveraged others for insight. And if you demonstrate no insight on go-to-market, there's going to be a bit of a red flag as to what execution is going to look like. So maybe you have a question, what should it be? Right. Love that sort of openness, but don't come unprepared without a GTM thesis.
Yep. Awesome. Thank you.
This concept here is something that explains perhaps the differences and maybe the attributes as to why one works versus another. So historically, top down, go call the CIO, see if they can put on the budget, win the big deal. The CIO then drives the usage through the organization, makes the definitive decision that this is our architecture, this is our platform. That evolves using open source perhaps as the vehicle to do this with this insertion or usage model whereby the doer, the actual users, download the product. Maybe it's free, maybe it's open source, maybe it's a low charge on my credit card sort of model. But either way, it doesn't require an enormous amount of selling at the top to get into the building. And in fact, users learn about the product through their own community. They become advocates. They might be committers to it. If it's an open source platform, they might share in their GitHub, Slack channel, other vehicles with their peer group that this is the best tool that they're using. It solves a very specific and immediate pain, perhaps not the most company-wide strategic pain, but a pain that's specific to that individual user. That user becomes a champion, and that gets pushed up through the organization. The downside with the bottoms-up model is that user or doer often can't set strategy. So there's a ceiling of sorts where that open source tool is, yes, widely downloaded, but the CIO doesn't know about it. It's not one of the standard tools. It's still one of the noisy tools relative to other alternatives that can be applied. It doesn't have an architectural win. And the idea here is that this middle out or sandwich model, therefore inserting into the middle, let's say the VP or director level of ops or something, is a way to win on both fronts. One, that middle manager can drive usage to the doers, the users, and can also set architectural strategy, budget commitment by bringing it to the attention of, let's say, the CIO to say, hey, this is something that our team really loves. It's having great impact. I'd like to advocate that this should be a budget item, and we'd like to standardize on it as a skilled principle in our organization going forward. So which is yours, is the question that we would ask as an investor, and why, and what are the attributes of your product in alignment to these different models. Many different companies in the enterprise are leveraging PLG, so there's lots of learnings here. Become expert at how people are doing this. See that the numbers are amazing here from reaching that magic 100 million ARR, and begin to understand sort of the benefits of what the tenets are of PLG. And just a skill set that you should have, do you have clarity for product-led growth on, are you reaching a particular pain? Does it deliver immediate value? Does it create stickiness in the product? Do you have a customer success thesis that doesn't just have entry, but through life cycle? And can you use that to actually create upsell across the entire enterprise? So these are some key attributes or tenets of PLG that we believe are critical questions to be answered as to whether or not you're a fit. Then the other fit question is, and in some cases PLG is not the right fit, but if you can design for it, it's amazing. And these are sort of the design criteria. Is it viral? Is it simple? Can it be self-served from a usage standpoint? And again, I'll share these slides, so there's a lot going on here. Then the concept of this flywheel is the way that the organization has to design itself to support and capture signals throughout these sequential steps. So the evaluators, beginners, regulars, and champions. And so you think of that flywheel of getting to know your ICP, your ideal customer profile, and walking them through and supporting them through this journey. To do that, you're going to have to create some key metrics in your process. And there's a number of tools. We'll get into that in a second. But this concept, or this acronym R, it sounds like a pirate talking: acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, and referral. Leveraging all of those data elements would be your first board meeting at a PLG company. This is what we're going to want to hear. What are the numbers against these 5 attributes? And have you built a business that captures those signals at scale? The process of selling in this environment, has all kinds of components to it as well. This sort of self-service orientation. So it's not that selling stops, but it becomes more of a, concierge sort of model. You're really helping the customer. You're collaborating with them. You give them experience level support. and you give them roles to support them in this process. So it's a different sort of concept than traditional get them on the phone and close them, and more about driving this service orientation need. And then I mentioned sort of the culture, and it really starts with you as founders to design the organization to believe in this product building and product driven environment. Again, I'll share all these slides. Lots of tools in the stack that need to be used to help capture things. So onboarding, messaging, everything from Gainsight and Intercom. Whatfix is a great one. Drift, another great one. Whole tool stack that needs to be leveraged from the each stage of the process. There's a company in our portfolio called DevRev that is worth looking at. This is the founder of Nutanix who created this company, and I won't play the video. I'll just let you refer to it later. But DevRev has a thesis that there's a new CRM required for the developer, the maker, that allows them to have real-time and instant insight into how the product is actively being used at the moment. And the companies that can successfully capture that level of insight in real time on a regular process are the winners. They're the ones who will react to market dynamics, issues, product features, product focus, capital execution against product strategy more effectively than those who wait for months to hear feedback. So this provides sort of this organizational theme here. Another company worth looking at called Endgame takes all the noise and turns it into a process and captures all this insight, makes it a dashboard, makes it an actionable insight. So again, I'll stop. Any questions at that point?
Question for me, Gamiel, and we'll get into this a little later, so maybe I'm a little early, but
yeah, go ahead.
You sit at this very interesting intersection point, both as an investor, but also as someone that runs a pretty broad and extensive CXO network. And so you see both sides of the coins, right? Really cool founders who are building cool technology, some of which fits into the broader themes that you're hearing through the CXO network, the ultimate buyers, the influencers of where these markets are going. For our teams who are listening in today, the example you just walked us through is it safe to say that the hat that you're bringing into some of these startup discussions? And conversely, how are you guys trying to interpret what the CXO network is suggesting as their areas of opportunities and willingness to make investments in as well?
Yeah, so I'll get into that in a second, but yeah, I spent a lot of time with global CIOs who are more sanguine than I've seen them in a while, meaning more aggressive about use of advanced technology, innovation. They're more bullish on their budget. They're closer to their line of business leaders than they've been in the past. The pandemic provided them access at the CEO level like never before. And at the top, they need to drive, the top level issues are cybersecurity, productivity, and collaboration using data for improved operations and outcome. And they're looking for advanced solutions all the time. So how does that fit into this whole product-led growth thing? They believe they've got to innovate faster as well. So they're looking for how you fit into enabling your solution to be early adopted or tested and adopted as simply as possible, and that you've got a process to support them. And this concierge model, I think, is an important one. So if they download it and people on their team have downloaded the product, how are you going to help them? How are you going to help them from an operational skills optimization standpoint? So skills shortage is a huge issue in most IT organizations today. They can't hire fast enough. They can't retain. And productivity of that team is an opportunity for automation. So how do you help with all of that stuff? And are you aligned there? So
excellent. Thank you.
So early adoption,
Srini, did you have a question?
Yes, I do have a question.
Okay, you've got a lot of background noise, my friend, so we can't hear you very clearly.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is it okay now?
Not necessarily. Oh, he'll come back.
Sounds like he's flying from the moon or something.
Yeah.
All right, so here's some of the things that we've learned as investors, is that part of the risk you as founders will have is that you're going to get pulled in many directions. And we believe that focus is really critical here. And that indeed you'll die of indigestion if you take on too many markets, too many customer types, too many use cases, and do so opportunistically without clarity. So what can you kill so that you can focus on the most impactful? And this is where early design wins, early design partnerships should not just validate nice to have, but true high impact, game changing sort of attributes for the customer. Not for you, but for the customer. That they can almost finish the sentences without you. They understand the value proposition without much coaxing. Then you know you've reached a focused, high-impact product market fit and ICP opportunity. The other piece is all too often we'll get the demonstration of the solution, sort of the dashboard on the left, when in fact what the customer wants is something that's quite elegant, something that's quite efficient from a use case, user experience deployment standpoint. And so think about, are you throwing things into a dashboard or an environment or a tool set that helps or confuses? Do you really have the user in mind? And is it designed for them or designed as a product thesis? And keep challenging this. We often will look to build out more and more function, but make sure that experience is really intentional and it's designed to be as elegant as possible. That out-of-the-box experience demonstrates impact quickly, almost viscerally, without much coaxing. The point I made earlier that go-to-market is not an afterthought. It has to be built into the thesis at the beginning. And this concept of bottoms up, creating the hook, and the upsell model, and this top down sort of concepts, and there's a whole number of concepts here. The picture I have on the right is Dave McJanet. He's the CEO of HashiCorp, amazing company, 150 million downloads of their products every year or more. I mean, just amazing demand. But they have to pierce the noise. They have to break through to the CIO. And I've been on many of these calls with Dave where we're on the phone with the CIO of American Express and Dave will say, look, I just looked up your company, your team has deployed or downloaded our product 18,000 times. And the CIO says, wow, I had no idea. So the quandary there is to make sure that you build a go-to-market thesis, not build it and they will come, is to help elevate the message through the process. So this is where this middle out thesis, develop the hook and the upsell as part of the overall story. So it's not just that they will download it and they will come. You've got to do both, is the point. And I've made this now a couple times. And this is some more details about just getting into how these operationally will work, and this model here of where you open, maybe with developer, then to a DevOps manager, and ultimately to the head of infra at different sales capacities as you break through different levels of engagement. Okay, so I'll stop there on that. This is the feedback to your point, Jim, from CIOs saying, we hear a lot from you all startup companies. Thank you, Mayfield. Thank you, Jim, for introducing your startups to us. But by God, if you guys could just nail your presentation, it would be so much better, because all too often, I don't understand what's in it for me. You're still talking about what school you went to, or how many patents you have, or God knows what, something about your tool, when in fact, I'm selfishly only interested in this short elevator ride with you for you to tell me how you're going to improve my team, my operation, my business, my life directly that brings priority to spending more time with you. So it's a very simple algorithm I use for telling the story arc, and it should be elegant, and it should be conducive to momentum making. It should catalyze a next step, and it's very simple. The acronym is something I call PAIN, problem, answer, impact, and next step. And the idea here is in a very short amount of time, and it should be able to do this in an elevator. Your presentation should follow this rubric as well. And it can have extended additional content, demos, etc. But it should nail these 4 points right out of the gate. And so let me just break them down and unpack them quickly. And again, I'll share all these slides with you so you can look at them later. The problem is you have to articulate the problem in a way that not just defines it, yes, that's an important problem, but elevates the problem, that gives a sense of urgency, more urgency, that resets priority. If they thought this was 4th on the priority list, your job is to make it number 1 on the priority list. That the problem is getting bigger and something they must put more attention to than before they met you. So that's your job on problem statement. Answer is, now that you've prompted them with this amazing problem, they're eager to hear that you have a breakthrough, order of magnitude, game-changing thesis to solving the problem. And your answer is not just clear, but it is indeed scary breakthrough. And scary may not be the right term, but the idea that it truly leapfrogs the current approaches, that it actually is an amazing sort of innovation. I now then need to know that it works. Give me an example of impact in a customer scenario that I get, something that has definitive both quantitative and qualitative outcome. On the quantitative side, give me some numbers. On the qualitative, give me the people process impacts, because it's got to fit into something I understand. And then that opens the door to talk about a very simple way that people get started. So people like you get started in the following way. And my objective here is to refine me as listener to begin to impart, who on my team will I give this to? Is this a project for Susan? Is this a project for Mark? I get it. I'll open the doors because what you just defined as a next step is so tangible. It's so specific. It's so akin to how I think. It appreciates how I need to go to a next step and what role you as the vendor will play in supporting me on that. The key point, always tying it back to them, their industry. All too often I'll hear feedback from a CIO and they said, do you actually know what we do? And boy, don't do a presentation where you don't know what they do or who they are or what's important to them. Don't even take the meeting if you can't prepare for that, because you'll never get back in. They'll dismiss you on that front. And this is just motherhood and apple pie sort of stuff, but I think a simple rubric to work from. Lots of key points that all sort of boil down to, that you want to convey in your presentation, but every single slide in your presentation should have a very harsh, why should I care? What's that slide? And you're on your 37th slide and you still want to show me a demo. Why should I care? Get clear. Get specific, and hold yourself accountable to being more specific there. 10 slides, 1 demo, 30 minutes is the goal. I always think the customer journey is the key one. So step me through, how do we get started? Don't boil the whole ocean. Don't make them buy the platform. Give it clear early access. Where do I start? What will I learn from that? I don't want to get married to you yet. I just want to start dating maybe. What are we actually going to get out of that first stage of a relationship with you? And do you have that thought through? Will you support me? Where does this go from here? Questions on any of that?
Not a question, more of a comment. Gamiel, Thank you again for being on these calls with us. It's super informative. One of the lessons that I've learned from now hearing you 4 times talking about this is oftentimes it's safe to say that the founder and their team are really just focused on the win and sort of miss the point what happens past the win. right? And what you're articulating here is the CXO or CIO's decision process to get you to the win, and then the stuff that they're going to want to see done past the win to show that this is actually not just a waste of time, but actually does solve a real problem.
That's a huge point that needs to be made. You're so correct to point it out.
Yeah.
The CIO, if you're selling at that level, is accountable for this portfolio of assets, people, resources, budget. Bringing in a new technology has a huge cost. It might be, even free or a low cost for that initial trial or something, but in their eyes, it is a multi-million-dollar lifetime decision, because getting you out, building the team, operationalizing is a long-term thesis that they've got to be able to think through. So have you articulated where this might go? Now, the downside of over-articulating too many big pieces that I'm trying to point out here is stage it. Make it specific where it will have impact initially. And again, don't overboil the whole thing, but be clear on what strategic impact needs to be long-term. Where could this go? So, yeah.
Yep. And just to add to that, Gamiel, sorry to take you back one more step, but
no worries.
When that CXO is delighted, there's a high chance that that CXO is going to tell other CXOs in their network. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Yep. And then one thing you coached me on a little while ago was that, these are people, right? These CIOs, CXOs are people. And so your project success ultimately ladders into their success. And so that kind of feeds the ego in a positive way. Was a big lesson I've learned from my interactions with you, Gamiel, was if you can make them the heroes in this engagement, they're going to do that. And the reason why I wanted to bring that up was when we chatted last, gosh, I think it was like a month and a half ago, Gamiel, if I remember correctly, yourself, myself, and Samai,
Yep.
and we were talking about POCs.
Yep.
You sort of like just said, hey, look, a $50,000 POC or whatever it's nothing for these guys. They'll do it. It's not, the money is not the issue for them. The fact that they could see this playing out into solving a real big problem, that they could help alleviate some downstream issues for them and ultimately turn their assets of what their responsibilities are inside an organization into something positive is so much bigger. And the fact that this could potentially even add to the positive impact that they've created internally means more to them than the $50,000 or $60,000, POC engagement. Is that a fair representation of what you were sharing with me back a month and a half ago?
I couldn't have said it better. And Jim, you're going to do the next presentation. So
no, the reason why I wanted, thank you, Gamiel. The reason why I wanted to bring that up is so often with our teams in this batch and other teams, right? Some people struggle with, will the enterprise spend money on the POC? And what I wanted to use this was an example of they absolutely will. The money's actually not the issue for them. The other issues are the things that you brought up, and I just wanted to reinforce that point. So thank you for.
I love the hero making thesis, which is how do I make my early adopter a hero?
Yeah.
Can I articulate that with precision? That is a visceral sort of thing for them, meaning you become partners in crime. You offer something that they appreciate, that you appreciate their problem, that you understand their pain, you understand who they have to go get budget from, what they have to accomplish, what a win looks like for them. So this is the stop talking and start listening thesis. And this is a long-standing selling model that I think people screw up a lot, which is very simple analogy. You've got two ears, you've got one mouth. That ought to be the rubric or the algorithm of the amount of content that's coming out of your mouth relative to what you're hearing. I'd love to hear twice as much from my customer about what their problems are, what their needs are, and less from me in a shorter burst of information that supports what I just heard from them. So be a consultative listener, and then you'll have all the fodder to help them be heroes, because you will have ingratiated a relationship whereby they hear that you're listening to them, they believe that you appreciate their burden, and that you're aligned to helping them reach their goal. If you don't have that sort of clarity, and even in a product-led growth company, where your narrative doesn't appreciate that consumer, that user, and you're still screaming your product, your feature, your new thing, then take a step back and get deeper with your customer. So yes, make a hero and understand how to do that, and listen twice as much as you talk.
Yep.
So in that process for engaging with a customer, these are the 10 attributes from our CXO network that they gave us back as learnings. And what I've got here is a very high level, and again, I'll share all these slides with you so you can dive into these in whatever depth you want to. I made the point before, understand their business. Boy, opening up the conversation where you don't know their business, great showstopper. Have a clear product vision and an entry point. Stop focusing on your technology, focus on the business, start narrow. Tell me how you'll operationalize this. So again, it's not that I'm not buying your product. I've got people, I've got process, I've got other things, I've got a broader ecosystem here. How does it fit into this? How does it truly get operationalized? And don't pretend that you're not ready for a large enterprise if you're in a large enterprise. So don't have your wheels all not working. If you're talking to a large customer, be enterprise class ready. How will this scale? How does it become a tool set that they can work from? What are the connection points? Are you SOC compliant? All these sorts of things that are critical, that are must-haves. If you're creating friction in the process, that's a showstopper as well. Oh, we'll have to get back to you on that. Have answers to questions that are expected for next steps. Have a process. This is how we engage with customers. This is the next step. This is who we'll assign to you. We'll put a scout into your organization. This is how we iterate the process and create a center of excellence, etc. Articulate not just the technical, but also the financial value prop. Tell me who's going to support me, who's selling, what's the process, who's going to be my guy or my person to support this whole thing. And then lastly, maybe to your point, Jim, they'll talk to others. So I want to know who are your customers and how you're leveraging them for insight, for design, thesis, for advice, because my peers really matter here. And are you in depth with my peer group? So those are some of them, and I've got slides on each of these that, again, I'm just going to share with you at the end. And I'm going to stop here and open it up for questions, I guess.
Excellent. Thank you, Gamiel. And it's actually refreshing to see you in the office for the first time in a very long time. Srini, are you back? Did you have a question you want to ask?
Yeah, I am back. I'm
Awesome.
sorry for the IT or the
no
audio
worries.
issues.
No worries.
Great presentation. Thank you so much for walking us through this. I had a question around your GTM, especially around the model about self-serve. And we are from Clip, and we serve the digital transformation industry in manufacturing, and the industry is a decade behind the modern technology and tools. That's where we see the opportunity, and we have a good customer market fit. But from an investment perspective, they don't quite understand the self-serve market. Manufacturing doesn't. They need a lot of help in doing that translation or the transformation. How does the investment community view that from an investable perspective?
Yeah, we'd like you to solve that. We'd like you to figure out that you've got a unique way to get to true adoption and usage by being so fit to finish to the pain of the ultimate user. And whether the decision process still requires, a top-down model or not, the first order issue is that ICP, that ideal customer profile, that early user has this, as I say, visceral sort of reaction to your offering, and you can get to them. You know the pain, you know what their environment looks like. You've organized an initial out-of-the-box offering that they can react to in a positive way. And then the question is, okay, so how do we leverage that into a selling motion? And so I don't care whether it's product-led growth or middle out or tops down. I first care that you understand and have an answer to a problem, and that you have precise. I mean, you could put up a customer profile and say, look, this is the problem, this is what they're facing, this is their environment, and let me just put a persona and a definition of this person and how close we are to them and how we've gone about validating that. That's a first order issue. Then from there, we can talk about, okay, how do we reach them? How do we reach them effectively? How do we scale from there? And so if they don't like, the manufacturers want a traditional selling model, fine. Then we'll support that process, but start with the initial pain.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Big question that I had. Oh, sorry, was another question? Lee Moore, did you have one? No. Vikram, did you have a question?
Yep. Hey, Gamiel, really great presentation, really insightful, especially for startups like us trying to navigate, corporations. One unconventional question for you, but putting your VC hat on, given what's happening in the world, obviously we're hearing reports about venture funding, not necessarily drying up, but it's obviously not as, I guess, loose as it was, say, last year. In 6 months, we potentially could be in world war, who knows? But broadly, do these, given that we're in such a once in a generation or once in a lifetime global scenario, do these change investment decisions? Because I know talking to VCs, some will say that we invest irrespective of these conditions. They don't really make a difference, blah, blah, blah. But I just wanted your opinion. Do these current geoeconomical trends, do they impact the current investment thesis or how we would look at startups?
Yeah, the bigger macro geopolitical stuff is indeed not yet having impact. Will it? I don't know. I can't predict that. The bigger impact things are more economic, around valuations and amount of capital available. I think what we've been witnessing over the past couple years is the amount of dollars coming earlier into the funding cycles has created valuation inflation. And the public market valuations, as they've come down since January, that has helped, and think of this selfishly from our perspective, that has helped the valuations for startups to come down a bit as well. So the idea that you as an entrepreneur are a little less aggressive in your expectation, frankly, for us is a bit of a good sign. We thought valuations were out of control and creating an environment that was unrealizable for both sides. Because we would invest at a number with a post-money valuation that was, wow, we're already at 150 post-money on a deal for a company that is pre-product. Like, that's a little crazy. Just think of your next raise. You guys are going to have to cover the Himalayan mountains for your next raise to actually be an up round. And meanwhile, we as investors need to report back to our LPs that we're making logical investments. We're able to get a sizable ownership because we're going to get diluted out over subsequent rounds, and we're just not able to get those. So we'd have to turn deals down, even though we thought the opportunity was a strong one. So valuations coming down, I think, help both sides of the equation. And that all resulted or has resulted from too many dollars available. To your question, though, will dollars dry up? I do think we will see not quite a 2008, but something like a 2008 sort of slowdown. We've seen that the large hedge funds, the tigers, et cetera, who've come in pretty aggressively are slowing quite a lot. They're moving back to public market from private market, not entirely, but in a way that we think will change some of the dynamics of their contribution into early stage investing. So fewer investors aggressively at the table supports that point that valuations will decline somewhat. I also think that the fundraising probably will take a bit longer. There'll be an opportunity, so the buyer-seller market dynamic will change a bit as well, where we'll give it a couple more months to see how you guys track. Let's continue the due diligence versus you setting the table and saying, hey, we're looking at term sheets on Monday, and let us know if you're interested. Otherwise, we'll take one of the top 10 that give us term sheets that we think is favorable. So I think that balance will shift. it's beginning.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Vikram. Limor, I saw you come back on. Did you have a question you want to ask? No? Okay. Gamiel, one morning I felt like I woke up, and as my eyes were starting to gain focus, I saw a tweet from Mark Andreessen talking about this thing called Web3. And then shortly thereafter, Zuckerberg was on stage talking about the metaverse. And in fact, we had a robust discussion about, well, not this morning, but offline, I'm having a robust conversation with one of my board members around Web3 and metaverse for our future batches. So I'm curious to get your opinion on that. Are we super early innings? Is Web3 really a rebrand of stuff that's already in play today? Just a way for venture to say, hey, this is new category investment opportunities. What's your unfiltered take on those two areas?
I do think there's a lot of replay of VR, AR, meta sort of conversation that many vendors are going to leverage, and I think this is the hype problem that we often see here in the Valley.
Right.
What's real is crypto themes, smart contracts, use of NFT as enterprise class capable solutions, new immersive use of social education skills, meditation to training, all real. None of these are new, but I think the technology is cleaner. So you sort of have to break down just sort of environments from user interface. I do think there's a whole new class of applications that will come out. Though we've been watching virtual reality for some time, I'd say 15 years, we've been watching virtual reality. New Oculus is more elegant. There's a lot more marketing around it. Are the applications fundamentally different? A little bit better, a little bit better. So that's that. On the smart contracts, et cetera, I do think there's some pretty unique opportunities there. Early innings. I do think that crypto themes for new title insurance, new asset management, new supply chain, so you look and break down some of there's a lot of experimentation that's going on there. You talk to some of the largest big banks, they're like, can't touch it, won't go there. We can't play in that world. We're SEC controlled, so there's sort of a regulatory problem. So it's still early adopter. Yeah. Crypto mining, crypto themes, all this. We think there's new infrastructure. So our thesis tends to have a sort of an enterprise perspective, which is what are the management tools that this new environment will need? What are some horizontal plays? Is there a new data layer? Is there a new security layer? Are there new management tools? And yes, there likely will be. And so that's probably where we'll see the early investments, all the way down to semiconductor. If crypto mining is so expensive and so egregious on the environment, there must be a better way. So there'll be innovation there. If smart contracts allow for new supply chain enterprise class optimization, will there be a new SAP, for instance, for supply chain? Likely, yes. Where will it begin? It'll likely begin in some of these fringe environments. I was talking to an NFT play around, I mentioned, or maybe I didn't mention, but property management. So if I NFT'd every property and I'm an asset manager, could I simplify the way we transact around those properties? Could I minimize for competitive sake, transaction costs? Yes. Are there apps for it? Not yet.
Okay. So there's a bit of a repackaging, if you will, of some of these aspects, as you're saying. But thank you for calling out the stuff that really matters right now. I'm sorry, I think I talked over somebody. Was there a question?
So yes, it's Limor. I had problems with my cell phone.
No
I just wanted to see regarding, so this is kind of 5G and more, there is a feeling that the IT world is infiltrating into this industrial world where previously it was not really a VC dominated environment. There's M&As, there's 200 billion automation world, but it's not historically a VC or kind of the way of doing business is more traditional. And do you see more of a trend going in that direction? As much as NFT and Bitcoin is all the rage, but the industrial world is also sort of going through a transformation. It was opaque in many ways for a large part of history, and now there's more and more IT and IT infrastructure that is penetrating into the cloud, into industrial world. Do you see that at the exit side of the business?
There's a number of macro tailwinds that I think support sort of the digital disruption of the industrial manufacturing, et cetera, world. Supply chain has been sort of an issue, shortage of skills, and people retention and all of that, I think are critical. I think that those who own supply chain operations, industrial manufacturing, are being asked for more digital first, cloud first sort of environments for resiliency reasons. They were forced here over the last couple of years to do things with more technology. Expectation that skills need productivity with advanced AI. So all of those things, yes. It's been a slow moving market though. One of the earlier questions was the buyer type still has a traditional buyer pattern. I haven't seen a huge transformation there. I talked to CIOs at Lockheed, at Rockwell, at a number of these other places, and they're still pretty old school. They still have a pretty old school process, but I do think that there's more, as I say, tailwinds in this market than we've seen before. What was cloud as an option is no longer. What was digital as an option is no longer. What was AI as a possible tool for predictive and even people replacement, and it's not quite as harsh as people replacement, but productivity is the softer way of saying that. Those are terms that corporate leadership is eager to hear. How will you change the costs of us doing what we do? We can't hire fast enough. Give me the equation. How do we do this with more efficiency than we ever did before? What if we have to shut down again? How do we make this as resilient as possible? Can you give me that? Is this designed in a way where deployment and accessibility is available across somebody's dining room table, or if they're in the building or not? All those sorts of things it must be design principles in your message, and that's what they want to hear. I also think there's a very eager interest to hear innovative solutions. So I do an annual survey to our CIO community and ask them, how much of your budget will you put into new first generation solutions versus your legacy? And of course, there's a little bit of, hey, yeah, we're very innovative, but then they say, no, 75% of my budget is with the old guard. That has flipped to more than 50% is in new innovation. They're accountable for driving innovation. They want to hear new ideas. But they need those ideas to have, as we've talked about through this whole presentation, to have merit, to fit their problems, to have impact that you can quantify and qualify with the peer group that you've worked with. So all of your thoughtfulness and all of that can get you over the hurdle. So yeah, great time to be an innovator is the long story. So. Yep.
And possibly a great time to know Gamiel as well. So my last question, Gamiel, is a number of our teams are quite interested. If you have the time to meet offline, is that okay if we make some introductions? Okay.
Sure.
Wonderful. Gamiel will send this presentation over our way, guys, and we'll pass it along to you. But with that, Gamiel, I know you're a very busy person. I don't want to take too much more of your time. Thank you again for spending some great time with us.
Spending time. Appreciate the questions. I'll send over the deck. And Jim, nice to see you.
Likewise.
Christina, nice to see you. And Sume as well. So everybody, have a good rest of your day. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Gamiel. Have a great day, my friend. Cheers.
Thank you.